Hi, everybody. Marilynn Hughes with the Out of Body Travel Foundation. Welcome back. We are going to be doing your questions today on this live stream. And I've got quite a few, so I've got piles on both sides of me to talk about today. And just a quick reminder, please click the like buttons. Please subscribe to our channel. Please consider becoming a member. All of these things are so valuable and important. They go into the algorithms with YouTube and with the internet, with Google, and it really determines whether we become searchable on the internet. And so click the likes, make sure you subscribe. And if you can, consider becoming a member. Becoming a member helps keep us more and more able to continue making our material available for free to anyone, anywhere in the world. And so we appreciate that so very much. And so let's see, where do we begin? I think I'll begin with what I consider the short questions, and then I'll go into my pile, which are the longer questions, which I think will be very interesting today too, because we have some deeper questions that people wanted to talk about as well. And of course, if you are here with me, please feel free to jump in on the chat and ask your questions as well, because that's what we're here for. And if necessary, we will do more than one live stream to make sure we cover everything. So we'll start with a question here. Last night, I was sitting in my living room, and suddenly the smell of my paternal grandmother's soap suddenly hit me. Now, she has been dead since 2014, and we moved into this house in 2017. Her soap was very specific: pink dove or ivory, which is rather hard to find in stores. We'd never bought it or used it in our house. I think I mentioned to you before about the instance in which the exact smell of my maternal grandmother's kitchen suddenly hit me when I opened my lunchbox one day. She had been gone since 2011, and the lunchbox was manufactured years after that. Is it possible that my grandmothers are trying to remind me of their continuing presence in my life? If so, is there a way I can engage with them and perhaps invite my grandfathers and others to join in? And so I said, yes, it's not just possible, but very likely that your grandmothers are trying to remind you of their continuing presence in your life. Scent is often used in this way from the spirit realm. I wrote a book called Fragrance Mysticism, which was to illustrate this very point, that fragrance is utilized in this small way like that, and in greater ways in the mystical spheres, because fragrance is actually utilized to delineate different levels of existence in the higher spheres of the mystical realms. So we have sweeter and sweeter scents as we go to, when I say sweeter, I don't mean sweet as in sweet, sugary. It's finer and more beautiful, ironically, probably more flowery in that way is what we would actually have them be more like. That you would, ironically, one of the things I'm very drawn to are the flowery aromas, or the aromas, things like patchouli, things that have that kind of exotic scent, excuse me, that you would find here on Earth. They're going to be those really beautiful scents. Looks like we have some people here. Hi, John. Great to have you with us. And Adriana, so glad you're both here. Adriana says, hello, dear Marilynn. It's awesome to have a live. Thank you. You're welcome. Hope you and family had a nice Christmas, and blessings to you and family in 2024, and right back at you all. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. And so, with the fragrance, these fragrances become higher and finer in the higher and finer spheres of existence. And one of the things that I experienced and discussed, one of the reasons I wrote Fragrance Mysticism, was to delineate how we actually communicate through fragrance. And sometimes I would even utilize fragrance by using certain types of scents like lavender or lilac and patchoulis to meditate with, to actually kind of thin out the realms, to bring me closer, to help me in my meditations to like bypass some of the astral realms and get closer to the higher spheres, to travel with more ease. And so, yes, absolutely, our deceased relatives can use fragrance. And we also hear about this in the lives of the saints, when we hear about all the instances of people smelling roses when they're in the presence of holiness, or in the presence, a lot of times you hear about this in the presence of Saint Therese when she did the showers of roses, but you hear about it in the presence of Saint Padre Pio and in the presence of many of the saints. So absolutely, this is a thing. And one of the things I mentioned here as well, that the scent is kind of a guidepost for this person, because it starts with him being allowed to know of their watchful care, but it's only the beginning, because it's a signpost of their direction and use. But when it comes up, it's important for him to pay attention to what's going on around him, because there's clues then as to what they would like him to pay attention to and notice and pay more regard to, and that's their gift to him. And it's really a special gift, because the moment that he smells it, it brings their presence to him. It's as if they're just right back there. So, I mean, it's just, I so, cherish this when this sort of thing comes up in our lives. I think it's really important to do that. So, just one of the ways that fragrance mysticism can touch us in our lives. Another quick question is, what do you think is the reason for dizziness and spinning sensation after meditation? Well, if you're doing your meditations well and you're experiencing the spinning sensations and the dizzinesses that come from touching into higher vibrations and frequencies, that's the reason for it, that you're coming back from the higher frequencies and vibrations, and that's a good thing then. So that's excellent, because if your meditations are good and you're going deeply enough, then you're touching into this actual higher frequency. So excellent. That's good. So excellent. Keep at it. That's a good thing. And so here we have something from Natasha, who asks, "Hi, Marilynn, I've been enjoying your podcasts featuring, quote, all the things, unquote, all very helpful and informative. Typically, I have to listen to them a few times. Each time I get something more out of it. Currently, I'm in a dry period and rolling with it. Is it possible that listening to your podcasts encourages encounters?" And I would just say simply to that, yes, and as well as reading the books. That's been something that I was told would happen, and I have seen it happen, and has been reported to me many, many, many times throughout the years, that these things do tend to encourage people to have activity. So absolutely, yes. It's been a few times that something has occurred after listening to your podcast, and last night was the latest. I was restless and couldn't fall asleep, so decided to meditate. Not long after quieting, I was literally struck by a bolt of what could have been like electricity on my crown, which is right up here at the top of your head, and simultaneously heard a loud clang, somewhat like cymbals. I opened my eyes, noted the time to be 10:45 p.m. I thought to myself, why doesn't it hurt? Wasn't I just electrocuted? I then heard sounds very similar to your frequency of Otara. For those who aren't familiar with that, that's a CD that I have. You can hear it here on the YouTube channel, the Rumble channel, available through the websites, outofbodytravel.org, outofbodytravel.wordpress.com. These are frequencies that were given to me by the angels, playing the octaves of taking someone through sort of a simulation of a vibrational raising. Nothing close to a real one, but a simulation of what they're trying to do in that situation. So she was listening to that CD, the frequency of Otara. She said, I immediately asked for protection from the Blessed Virgin Mary, Jesus, and the guardian angels, and nothing happened. I calmly prayed the Hail Mary and the Our Father, which to me is a step in the right direction, since on prior different encounters, I was so excited or scared, I got pulled back into my body, causing the experience to end immediately. And so this is good progress, because it's indicative that she was able to experience this and not shoot back into her body through the whole thing. So that's excellent. So thank you, Marilynn, for sharing your wisdom with all of us. I appreciate your help. Hi, Natasha. What an honor and pleasure to hear from you. Yes, that can happen, and it does. Just bringing to our conscious awareness the possibilities can generate an experience or a set of experiences. I'm responding to her asking about whether she's able to have more experiences by watching the podcast. So I'm glad it appears that it may have done that for you. The loud sounds you heard were the sounds of the astral plane. So for many of you who listen frequently, you might be familiar with how I talk about how these sounds are often quite unnerving and shocking when you hear them for the first time. And I think Natasha had that experience of it when she heard the clanging, and it was like a bolt of like being electrocuted. So that's how she experienced it and described it. I think it's always interesting to get each person's different perspective of when they had that first experience into the vibrational experience, and then hearing the sounds of the astral plane. And the direct thrust of it was your spirit flipping from body consciousness to spirit consciousness. It can be very drastic like that. And it is absolutely progress that you were able to discipline your mind to retain the calmness required and not get immediately thrust back into your body. For those of us who have gone through this, we know that what a big step that is. It's huge. And so she was able to remain in that state, even if just for a minute or two more. So that's excellent work for Natasha. Thanks for the question. And I always like it when people share those experiences, because it gives other people a chance to, experience it through one another. And it shows them the different ways that people, find their way to the out-of-body experience. And so there she goes. And, she talked about how she was going through what she thought was a lot of dryness before this started to happen. So I wanted to include this experience of dryness from one of our people as well. And this writer says, things have gotten pretty crazy for me. And this is one of our members who is a pretty adept mystic. I've been having to get glances of my own wounded heart that hasn't been at all pleasant. Feels like I've moved 1,000 miles away from God. It's quite lonely there. I've seen the Wailing Wall in Israel fall, open vision, wide awake, terrible corruptions there, breaks my heart. Some days ago, I saw an angel coming into form by way of light, partials of stardust, stood in the sky by the moon. Quite fascinating, really. I also saw another planet not far off, like another Earth, nearing to the moon. Some watcher got a bit dominant and woke up yelling towards me. But lately, I've been so dry, it shames me. God has been quiet towards me. I feel lost. I pray things are great for you, Marilynn. Thank you for asking how I am. That is so sweet. And I responded and said to her, and this was a few months back, so I was going through a dry period. I'm not currently going through one. I completely understand. I've been in a wasteland of dryness for a long time now, too. God remains mostly quiet to me as well, only glimpses here and there, just enough to let me know that God has not abandoned me and that I should persevere and carry on with the work. There have been times I'd wondered if I'd fallen from grace for months at a time, maybe years. The dryness can be horrible. And the broken heart, I carry one too. The earth is a sorrowful world. We cannot live in it and be untouched. You're not alone. Let us at least share in the brokenness and love one another as He has loved us. That will get us all through this exile. With love, my friend. And she responded and said, that is so beautiful, Marilynn. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, a breath of fresh air. I find so much comfort in your openness, as real truth seems so rare a commodity these days. Though it saddens me that you experience this too. It is a lonesome truth that often causes me to question everything, an unquenchable longing, mixed with an unutterable sorrow that seems to penetrate the very depths of my being. Please know you have been a great inspiration to me, a lone voice in some of my wilderness moments. That is not a small matter. Bless you, Marilynn. You are loved. And in sharing this, I'm sharing that for all those who write to me, and there are many, many, many of you who go through these dry periods and feel those very thoughts. So I share that with you to let you all know you are also not alone. This is the same type of dryness that Saint Therese of Lisieux, Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross wrote so eloquently about. This is that desert of the soul, the part of the mystical path that we must all traverse at different points in our journey. Let me see here and catch up. Looks like Paul Osasui joined us. Hi, it's good to see you. Happy New Year, Marilynn. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year to you too, Paul. It's really nice to see you here. Adriana says, I read Astral Projection Made Easy, Come to Wisdom's Door, Mysteries of the Redemption, Evergreen, beautiful autobiography. I really enjoyed it. Oh, thank you, Adriana. And the first Michael Jackson book and Galactica, can you advise? Sure. Let's go through the other things you've asked here, and I will answer. So what book is a good one to read next? Okay. I have felt the vibration and heard the loud astral plane, and nobody describes it best than you, Marilynn. You describe it perfectly. Thank you. Also, all the voices of humanity, thoughts, similar when one is in a large crowd hearing the voices of people talking. Yes. So I just went with what came to me when you said that. The next book that I think would be great for you to read would be The Fragrance of a Mystical Rose. And that is, let me pull it off the shelf here and I'll show it to you. It's this book right here. And this one is going to take apart what you've read in the Mysteries of the Redemption and Galactica and break down some of the mysteries within it. So that is what I recommend to you next, Adriana. So there we go. So now we're moving over to this pile of goodies. And we're going to start with some things over here. All right. So we had, let me just make sure I have it all figured. Okay. All right. So we're starting with a question here. All right. I believe you are doing well. Thanks for all you do. I really consider you to be one of God's special ones. That's very kind. Thank you. Sometimes that makes me uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't know. Um, I believe your writings and revelations will gain a massive following in ages to come. Well, I hope my work is of some value in the future. Thank you so much for saying that. That's very kind. And so I'll go through some questions here. So one question is, if Jesus Christ is the image of the invisible God, is it correct to say the Virgin Mary is the image of the divine feminine? And I think that the way I would put that is that in my mystical experiences, I would say yes, that's correct in my mystical experiences. However, theologically, in terms of like what would the Catholic Church say about that, I don't know. I haven't. They might agree with that, but I'm honestly unsure. Now, in terms of what I was shown about the divine feminine, I would say that that's very likely true. However, the Virgin Mary would be one aspect of that divine feminine, because when I was shown the divine feminine, it was a force that was really, really great. And so I would say that there's more mystery to that than I could probably, really say, is the Virgin Mary the full image of the divine feminine in the same way that Jesus Christ is true God and true man? I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that definitely the Virgin Mary is the image of the divine feminine, but the divine feminine is more than what we know the Virgin Mary to be here on earth. So in terms of the bigger picture, there's more to it than I think I understand and know. And so I would say she could be the full thing, but there could also be a lot more to the divine feminine. I would even say that, the divine feminine, as I experienced it, would encompass a lot of things. I would put Mary Magdalene in that energy. I would put the energy of the creative Mother Earth, the creation, all of the creative energy is divine feminine. That's creation energy. There is a mysterious and very grand thing behind it that is, I think, greater than my ability or knowledge and what I understand. It was just so amazing and big and great and beyond my comprehension. So I believe there's more to the mystery, is what I would say. But I do feel like the way that this was put is correct, but it's probably just not all there is to know, But I think probably understanding that Jesus Christ being the image of the invisible God is probably not all there is to know about that either. So I guess we will continue to learn as we continue to grow in the spiritual path and move towards higher spheres as souls. But I think that's one of the things that I definitely learn from continuing in the mystical path, is that the humility that comes from knowing that everything that you see is just a small portion of what it really is. There's so much more to it. And let's see here. Oh, you're welcome, Adriana. Adriana says, thank you. You're very welcome. And so I think that's a great question, by the way. It's a fantastic question. And I hope I made sense in the way I explained that. Okay, and so the next question is, I listened to all your video podcasts on spiritual warfare, and I was drawn to where you talked about false doctrines. Can we call the following false doctrines? And the question is the secret law of attraction and the prosperity gospel. And probably the simple way to say it is, yeah. Yeah. And let's see what I actually wrote to this person to explain it a little more. Let's see. Here we go. So I'll kind of just share what I actually said to this person. So pretty much yes. And as to the law of attraction, there's a minuscule amount of truth to the fact that we naturally amend to the vibrations which correspond to our own. And this might have been the original idea behind it, but that's where it kind of ends. So the truth you can glean from it is simply that we naturally amend to the vibration and frequency which correspond to our own. In the mystical worlds, we are drawn to either the vice or virtue which we are compatible with and naturally amend to the places in concert with them. Everything else then said about the law of attraction, you kind of let it fall away. That becomes false. And in relation to Christ in the invisible God and Virgin Mary being the divine feminine, it's a fair comparison theologically, maybe not. On the other hand, in having witnessed the divine feminine, I'd say that the Virgin Mary would be a profoundly worthy image of it. But yet the divine feminine as a whole is a larger conceptualization, hard to express, but so is God. So if you understand that they are images of an ineffable reality, you can use them in this way. And so hopefully that's helpful too. And so another question then is, are there any consequences for divorce? Will it cause a negative karma and make one stuck in this plane? And so I said all action has consequences. Divorce is a tough one because every circumstance is different. If you are in the unfortunate situation of having to go through one, focus on processing through it and working through the difficulties as you go. There are obvious consequences which come if you have children together, but there can be other things that create karmic ties just because all relationships do that. Divorce is difficult, but use prudence. Remember, marriage is supposed to be entered into out of your hands if it is being instigated by the other party, but don't take it lightly. Never take it lightly. Do all that you can to address the things in your marriage and make it work. But if it just can't be saved, then realize you'll have things to work through. You'll have things to purify. Try to come to a place of peace with one another, if at all possible. Circumstances are all different, and we all do the best that we can. We have to allow ourselves to be human. And, I think that one of the difficulties that comes to people with divorce can come with whatever their religious path might be. And, especially for those who might be Catholic, who have to go through an annulment process. And that can make it even more difficult because it can turn into a many-year process of going over and over and over the same events. And it becomes like a microscopic examination of this relationship that for whatever reason didn't work. And I think that what inevitably it comes down to for those who have gone through the divorce is that it really, in the end, doesn't really even necessarily matter if they were right or wrong, if they made a mistake or if they did not, because they are where they are. And you can only hound people so much for having made an error. And there are many errors that all of us make in our lifetimes, and we have to go forward from where we are. And, unless there's a situation where there are two people who want to actually try to go back and fix a marriage that has fallen apart, and then, of course, they are free to do that. But in the other instances where that is not the case, people have to have the freedom of conscience to be allowed to have been human and made a mistake and be allowed to continue to go on living. And that is, I think, where it can make it very, very difficult for those in any kind of faith that does annulments. I know Catholics do that. There's probably I think there are other religions who have, I know in the Jewish faith, they have what's called a get. I believe there's annulments in the Orthodox tradition. So I'm sure there's other religions that have procedures. But I think that for those going through the divorce, what you want to focus on is how you are going to process through the end of the relationship and your own part in it, and how you're going to move forward in trying to not create any more karma out of it than is necessary. And so that how you do that is you try to do things with as much grace and kindness to one another as you can, and you just do the best you can, because sometimes the best you can is not great. It's not perfect. There's a reason why people get divorced. It's usually because things are not going well between them. So perfection would be unfair to expect. So kindness towards people going through things like divorce, I think, is what we should all call ourselves to do and offer to those going through the breakup of relationships, whether they're marriage or otherwise, just because we know that it's difficult and it's unhelpful to give them more flack because a marriage is being broken up or whatever. We have to let them make that decision. They have to make the call. And then we have to give them the freedom to continue living and go on forward with their lives. They're still a living being. Let's see, I'm missing some thoughts here. Hello, MT. Happy New Year. She says, hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well. Great to have you with us. So I think that in concluding on that subject, I think it's just really important that kindness to one another and kindness for everyone all around is really important. And I think that would go a long way for everyone going through it and for anyone trying to help anyone going through that sort of thing. And so that takes us to this, where, let's see. All right, here we are to this one. All right, so, okay. I love to hear your explanations. You are so eloquent speaking and you articulate things so well. And every time you explain, I totally get it. I'm so glad to hear that, because sometimes I feel like I'm just wandering all around and I'm like, well, I hope they got that. So thank you for telling me that I do make sense when I try to explain. So on page 214 of your Galactica, a treatise on death, dying, and the afterlife, you describe an experience you had of a vision of the heavens and a parade showing statues portraying the history of the salvation, beginning with the Old Testament patriarchs and prophets, and continued through the life of Jesus, finalizing at the ascension of Christ. After the final statue was depicted, and above the statues was the entrance to heaven, and below the statues were thousands of people, all reaching to the heavenly gate. These were souls in purgatory who regretted the missed opportunities in life, which would have allowed them to enter heaven immediately upon their death. Although they did not appear to be suffering in any physical way, they exhibited and were clearly undergoing mental suffering and being able to see the gate of heaven, but not being able to enter at that time. My question is more of a personal note, since I too experience all kinds of regrets of past actions and words and deeds that I have done, but now I see that they were wrong. At the time, I was young and stupid. I did not know better. I was just foolish and selfish and blind. I have repented much of these actions and have asked for forgiveness. I try my best not to do it again and then catch myself and immediately repent and change my attitude and words. And I try my best to love. Sometimes I fail and I must try again and again to be a little better today than I was yesterday and love more. In any case, there is not one single day that goes by that my mind doesn't wander in the past memories and remember and regret. I quite often recall the words of our Savior Jesus explaining in Matthew 7:13-14, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." And his words as well in Matthew 19:25-26. When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished and asked, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." To me, your experience is a clear example of these verses, that heaven's gate is narrow and many missed the opportunity to enter. Also, you finished by writing that you marveled at this grand plan of the Lord. I know the grand plan of salvation means with God all things are possible. Our Heavenly Father, God Almighty, who created love and loves us so much, will give us many opportunities to learn this love so we can qualify to enter the gates of heaven. Can you expand your thoughts in this vision? Anything you can say to help people like me with many regrets? I know there are many people like me out there suffering from all kinds of regrets. Thank you, Marilynn. The examples in your book brings the scriptures alive. Thank you for all you do. Jesus loves you. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very honored by that. Well, even just the beautiful email that this person wrote to me shows that this person is well beloved of the Lord already, right? All of you can see that, right? It's very clear that this person is very much giving a great deal of thought to all the things necessary for us men and our salvation, so to speak. So here's the thing. Every one of us, once we begin this purification pathway, we go through this deep regret. I want to hear just what Paul said. Paul Osasui says, "I have found so much peace in the rosary and Jesus prayer. It has helped me overcome vices. I joined the RCIA program in a Catholic church close to me." Oh, I am so happy to hear that, Paul. That is so exciting. I love the Jesus prayer. That is something that is very much part of my daily prayer. And I love the rosary. It's not something that I'm just drawn to, but I know a lot of people who are, but the Jesus prayer is one that I'm totally drawn to. I love the Divine Mercy Chaplet. The rosary is awesome because the Blessed Mother in most of her apparitions has told us to pray the rosary. And so I'm so excited that for you, it is something that you're very drawn to. And you know what I found is there was a period of time where I prayed the rosary a lot, and then I got drawn more to the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy. And then for 3 years, I was doing the Liturgy of the Hours daily. And so I kind of bebop around. But you know, the Jesus prayer is one of the constants for me. So that's really exciting. And I'm so excited to hear that you're an RCIA. So you need to keep in touch with me about that, Paul. That's very exciting. And Aya Anna, Welcome, Aya. Hi, she says hello to, hi. Very great to see you here. I'm very glad that you're here. They've made this chat screen much smaller. So it's kind of like you have to like have a little spectacles on here to see it. Um, so when we all, when we enter that purification pathway, we absolutely enter into the regrets, and we become much more aware of all the things that we do and have done. And we have this period almost like of mourning and grief over our past acts. But every one of us was young and stupid, at some point in our lives. And the sad part of it too is that even as we get older, we are also still kind of stupid at times. We continue to do stupid things that we regret. And one of the things we have to remember and remind ourselves is that God created us as a fallen race, and He kind of knew that we were going to be human beings with failings and with difficulties. And that was part of the journey that we were going to travel here. And so I would definitely ask this person to be kinder to themselves and to understand that God would be very, very pleased with this meditation that this soul is having on their interior life, and on even just on this vision and the desire to overcome their vices and to become a purer soul. The fact that this soul has become aware of the mistakes of the past and has become more aware of the mistakes of the present, and is identifying those and stopping themselves in their tracks and choosing something different and then continuing forward. These are all how we do purification. None of us is like instantly different. We mess up, and we mess up and we have to do it over, and we have to stop ourselves, and we have to then rethink, redo, rinse, repeat, wash. We all have to do these things. None of us are going to just magically be get it right every time, just because we realized now. It takes time, and even then we're still going to have our little moments where we're not proud of ourselves, or we're not proud of the way we're thinking, or what's going on in our head, or the fact that we're thinking or doing something that is like an old habit, and we're like, oh, really? I just did that again. Or even just the fact that we even just realize in ourselves that we have thoughts that are not in accord with where we would like to be. And we know that it's a thought that's wrong or incorrect or not graceful or gracious or kind. But we recognize, gee, I'm really just not there. Those are the things that we fight against in this battle of purification. And so when we go to the second scripture you're quoted, which I love, which is Matthew 19:25-26, Jesus says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And one of the reasons I loved the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy and it was because of the promises that Jesus gave to all of us who would practice its devotion. And Jesus had appeared to Saint Faustina in the 1930s, and the church instituted this Divine Mercy devotion 1 week after Easter every year, where the Lord promised, this baptismal purity to anyone who would, engage in this novena and this Chaplet of the Divine Mercy, and going to Mass and confession on Divine Mercy Sunday. and the soul would receive baptismal purity, as if you had committed no sin. And I was astonished by the mercifulness of that. And we do, in the Catholic churches, many what we'll do, many of the churches will do not only the rosary now for the dead, the deceased, but they will also do a chaplet of the Divine Mercy, because the promises for the chaplet of the Divine Mercy are that the soul will be cleansed to receive baptismal purity as well as they cross over into the next life. And so that's the reason for the chaplet of the Divine Mercy, and praying the chaplet of the Divine Mercy for yourself and for others has all of these beautiful benefits. And in the diary of Saint Faustina, Jesus had said, I am clamoring to my mercy is clamoring to be spent from within me, or something to this degree, where he's like, please tell the world that mercy is clamoring to be spent from within me. And he's just basically saying that it has so much mercy that he wishes to dispense to the world. And he continually just emphasizes over and over, come to me and ask for my mercy, and I will give it to you. And he says many times, no one will go through the door of judgment unless they reject the door of my mercy. And one of the things I have learned to do is really just throw myself at the feet of Christ's divine mercy, because I have really come to believe in that clamoring that he is doing, and how much he truly wishes to spend that mercy on all of us. He spoke of, ask, knock, and the door will be opened. All the things that he said for us were very clearly telling us how much he was reaching out to us, and all we had to do was reach back. And so we forget that it's exactly what it says here, that with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And so we forget that, when we fall, it's not on us by ourselves to fix it. It is on us to reach out to God and his mercy and ask for that grace. Another thing that I often speak about is that vision of Mary to Catherine Labouré, when Catherine Labouré was receiving the miraculous medal in the 1840s. And the Blessed Mother had on her hands, she had these glowing rings on all her fingers. And Catherine asked her, because there were a few rings, 2 or 3 of them were shining with light and the others were not. And she asked the Blessed Mother, well, what were the ones that were shining with light and the ones that were not glowing with light like that? And the Blessed Mother told her the ones that were shining with light were the graces that people asked for frequently and all the time. And the others were all the graces that people did not remember to ask for. And when I read about this vision, I realized that I needed to ask for all the graces that we all forget to ask for. And so I just asked her for all the graces that are on your fingers that nobody knows to ask for. And so ask for those graces from the Blessed Mother that we don't know what to ask for, along with the ones that, are lit up, but the ones that are not as obvious. And ask for all the helps that heaven can give us that we may not even know that we need. And this is what it means when when Jesus is always saying, with God, all things are possible, or, you know, it is harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, because these are the things that we try to do ourselves. But when we ask God to do it through us, it can be done like nothing. That's the way we have to start viewing all of this, and including this vision of salvation history, because in this vision, everything that I was seeing, and I'm trying to take myself back to it. I remember what I was seeing was this infinite perfection. And it was like everything had been planned out, like before the dawn of time. And I saw all of salvation history, the prophets, the patriarchs, and they were these white statues, but it was like going up a hill and showing the timeline and all the people involved in that salvation history. And it was just such perfection, and it was beautiful, beautiful. There was this energy about it that you can't put into words. And that salvation history could not have come about through any of those people. It came about through the hand of God that overshadowed that entire history, that was constantly above. If you can imagine the hand of God, which was bigger than that entire history, and the face of God shining over all of it. And these were people who of themselves were just like you and me, and we could do nothing, and they could do nothing. But it was that overshadowing. And we must do the same. We must allow ourselves to be overshadowed by that hand of God to lead us to our own salvation, not just our own salvation history, but our salvation future. Because this is how it is done. It will not be done through our thinking or our intellect. It will be done by God placing his hand upon us and doing it through us. And this is when it all then makes sense. It's another way. And this is when we let go and we let God do it. And it doesn't mean we don't take responsibility, but it means that we realize that no, this is impossible for man, but it's possible with God, because all things are possible with God. And so when you are going from the human, the mortal, being on the ground in the worldly sense, and you want to go to the immortal, something has to shift, right? It has to be different. And this is what you're seeing when you're seeing in this vision. And now I'm getting slammed with energy. What you're seeing in this vision is that line of demarcation between the mortal and the immortal. And those who were unable to reach that immortal, it wasn't necessarily, it was an energetic thing. It was literally a surrender, an act of surrender. And we think it's only about our righteousness. But remember the two men who were praying in the temple? And there was the man who went in there and he threw himself before the temple and he said, God, I'm a sinful man. Please forgive me. And then there was the guy who said, I'm so righteous and I do everything right. And Jesus told us the one who was truly righteous before God was the one who just understood he was a sinful man. And he threw himself before God and asked for mercy. There's the line of demarcation, because it's when we know that we must throw ourselves into the arms of God, because only God can lift us up from this human, worldly, mortal vibration into that next level where He says, I know, I understand, I created you that way. But now that you know and understand, I can lift you up and take you along salvation's path. And that's what the difference is. And that's how we understand, because here we come back to how everything is vibration and frequency. Even this becomes vibration and frequency, but you see how it even comes back to recognizing our sinfulness or our inability to do it ourselves, and knowing we need the mercy of God becomes an issue of vibration and frequency. You see? Let me get these questions and thoughts here. So let's see. I've got this thing in the, sorry, I hit a button I shouldn't have. Okay. And so John says, congratulations, Paul, on RCIA and embracing prayer. And John is quite the prayer warrior. So you've got a friend in John. Ava Anna says, it feels like walking through a desert or a valley. There's no shortcuts. Absolutely. And John, thank you so much. We have a super chat. Thank you very much. So helpful. I always enjoy your discussion of people's questions and experiences that they share with you. Thank you so much, John. We have Amanita Muscaria. Welcome. Welcome. Hello, Marilynn. We've all done stupid things. Absolutely. Just being aware of it is a big step. Absolutely. Very much. Adriana, thank you. And Paul says, thank you, John. Our God is truly merciful. Adriana says, Marilynn, your explanation is always breathtaking. Thank you so much. I'm honored by that. Thank you, Adriana. I'm honored by that. And so hopefully that was helpful. And let's move on to this next question. So we have this one, which says, you mentioned as Christ incarnated, He brought a new pattern into existence, making available to other souls after Him. Christ consciousness is a pattern that became available mystically, and that one can actually see this in the mystical spheres. You mentioned it is like a grid, and they appear as mathematical equations and grids, and that it becomes available to one in the mystical sphere. This is fascinating to me, since shapes, numbers, patterns, sequences, etc., are the divine proportion in God's might creations. One can indeed see God's precise mathematical patterns in everything, leaves in flowers, DNA molecules, universe, etc. Can you expand on what you've seen in regards to the Christ consciousness appearing as mathematical equations and grids, and or anything else you may have seen? It's really amazing. I'd give everything to see this. Thank you so very much. I will try. This is another one of those things where it's very hard for me to expand, because I don't understand mathematical equations, although I've been honored to see them. Aniel, welcome. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Well, you are very welcome to be here even late. So I'm glad to have you. So with the Christ consciousness and it appearing as grids and mathematical equations, just expanding from what we were talking about, I think that it kind of is an easy transition, right? Where you see that all of these things become frequency and vibration of different levels. When I was taken to see these different geometric patterns, and I was actually shown that there was a master number of like the second coming of the Christ in the heavens, and I was shown these different mathematical equations of Christ himself. But I'd have to be honest and say that because I don't know enough about math to actually understand them. But what I can say about it is that it shows that there is this exactly what you're mentioning. There is this mathematical symmetry to all creation, all existence, and all these things, and that those it's really interesting because like when you're going towards like the heavens, the actual heavenly spheres, like heaven, but there's more than one heaven, so it's hard to say just heaven itself because there's many heavenly spheres. You go through, there's a few things you go through. You go through one of these corridors in the galactic heavens where you see all these stained glass windows that are hovering alongside, and they are of the apostles and of Christ, and oftentimes of great important biblical scenes. And then you also go through the geometric patterns. And when you go through them, it's like your energy and your frequency is, you are lifted up into some type of higher frequency vibration. And then after the geometric patterns, there is this other like tunnel like place which takes you through the mathematical equation of the Christ. And again, it has to do with frequency and vibration. You see the mathematical numbers and the master numbers, and it does something to your consciousness. I can't really explain it, but you definitely are taken to a higher level. And it's like you have to go through these corridors, and there's other corridors that you go through as well. But these are just some of them. Because, you know, you're going through, before you even get there, you have to go through a star tunnel, which is very much like a black hole, to get to all these tunnels, you know. And then there's other things. So, you know, it's, you know, so the numbers, the geometric patterns, they have some type of significance, which is really beyond my comprehension, honestly. But it has to do with frequency and vibration just on a base level. And I think that I can definitely say it has to do with raising your frequency and vibration. And I think that in my experience, it was something that I was made to know, you know, and it was important that I know that it existed. This geometric grid was important somehow, and that it was important that I knew that it was there. And it was important that I knew that this mathematical equation system thing existed and it was there. But it was kind of like, you know, God understands that I'm not a mathematician. I'm not good with these things, and that this is not my specialty, and I'm not going to be able to do much with that information. So it was more of one of those things of it's just for you to know. You know, it would be very, very interesting if someone who had, you know, deep mathematical knowledge and geometrical knowledge would have these visions and have them long enough to be able to bring back some knowledge of their meaning. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are people out there who do and who have had interesting experiences like that they can share. But that was I think the gist of what I can share about it. I know there's a lot more to know, and you know, so it's really cool. So let's see here. Adriana says, I would give everything to see 10% of all that Marilynn has seen. Oh, thank you. That's really cool. She has seen amazing things. What a blessing she is for all of us. Thank you for sharing your experiences in books and videos. Oh, thank you, Adriana. I appreciate that. It's an entire life of dedication out of your free will to the Lord, which helps us all. Thank you so much, Adriana. I appreciate that. That means a lot. That means a lot to hear that. Thank you. So moving on to our next question. Let's see here. we have this question, which is, let me get to the original question. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one just because a lot of people have this problem. And a lot of times it's men, but I've heard from women who have it too. And so we're going to just take care of this one and see if it's helpful for some people out there. So my sex drive has been overpowering me for most of my life. The ironic thing is I honestly would never have chosen it to begin with. The best way I can describe it would be a person who's never used narcotics in their life and had no desire to. Everything is going fine until they wake up one day with the burning desire to go through a tough part of town. Purchase a small bag of powder from a scary looking guy on a street corner, then shoot it into their body using a syringe they found in the gutter. That's what the desire for sex has been like since I was 12 or so. It's intrusive and unwelcome to me, and I wouldn't mind at all if it vanished entirely. I've been studying tools used by folks in addiction recovery, in particular, avoiding triggers. When something suggestive pops up in an ad on the internet, I immediately X out of it and send ad was inappropriate feedback. In public places, I do everything I can to avoid looking at women's bodies. There is a phrase for folks in recovery that is effective for me: alert, avert, affirm. Alert yourself to the presence of harmful stimuli, avert your gaze and attention, affirm that you are not going to indulge in it. I see a counselor. I used to self-pleasure every day, sometimes more than that. Let's see, that's fallen quite a bit. Sometimes I look at nude pictures of women, never videos or anything. This person is married. The wife is aware of the problem. I may have, let's see, it's blah, 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 blah. Okay, my marriage and relationship with my wife is good and stable. I think it's, in fact, a lot better now than when we got married. My wife's libido is just considerably less than mine. There's nothing wrong with that, just the way she is made. I'd prefer to wait for her to initiate sexual stuff, which she does about once a month. In the past, I used to bug her for frequent sex and often engage in de facto sexual harassment of her. I feel really bad about that behavior and hate it. It's objectifying another person and definitely not how Christians should behave. I also engaged in sexual harassment of girls at school and my best friend's sister when we were younger, and I really regret that too. I'm about 45 years old now. You are exactly right. My sexuality does unground me. It does interfere with the peaceful, unitive state with God I'm trying to enter into, not just with the fantasy and self-pleasure, but overall in my daily life, because it has always been something I would obsess about frequently. Not looking at women's bodies and sexual images really helps to curb it, but I still have a long way to go. Reading the stories of the Desert Fathers has really helped me here. Those guys wanted to know God and be united with him, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. That brings another question into the mix. Are there already issues between you two? Oh, wait a minute. It looks like my printer did something. Okay, did something there. Yeah, that did do something there. Okay. All right. So it got mixed up. We had talked about this issue, and I had asked him about whether he had read The Theology of the Body by Pope John Paul II. I had spoken, he said he had been struggling with sexual obsessions and it causes him some distress. He knows he keeps going on about it, but he felt like it was an impediment to his spiritual growth. He made a lot of progress in avoiding fixating on women's bodies and immediately looking away from triggering images on the internet and TV. And he felt that he was a little bit bisexual and sometimes had to avoid looking at men too. And his wife knew about this and understood. And he said, maybe this is actually part of my spiritual growth. The Desert Fathers recounted real struggles with demons of sexual desire. And maybe that is the case for me. Please pray that I find strength to deal with this and make progress. And so I had suggested the theology of the body by Pope John Paul II. And I said, I'd like to hear your thoughts because I think this is very important. I don't want you to feel at all judged. Everything you are doing is actually very common. The problem is that it is something that often leads to problems in marriages down the road. It's not just the masturbation. It's not necessarily even the masturbation. It's the fantasy part. That's the part of the reason why porn is so detrimental to men and women, because it makes that deep, intimate love harder to attain. I said, however, with the bisexuality, there are some things your own spouse can't provide to you. So she may appreciate that you can take care of some of those things through your own fantasy life. And there may be other things too, but you do want to be careful because it is a fine line. So let's see if we can go forward. Moving forward. Okay. So this is a common thing. I hear about this a lot from men who struggle with their sexual desires towards women and wanting to have a deep spiritual life. And all right. And so I had mentioned, I said, one thing I'd like to say about your continuing struggle with lust is that these issues are always much more difficult when you're younger. And I really didn't know how old he was at the time. That's usually the case because the way our bodies shoot out hormones. And of course, many of my friends and I had conversations about how different things are after menopause because we don't have estrogen making so many of our decisions for us anymore. One of my friends had said it was embarrassing for us to realize that so much of what we did was just animal behavior related to this bodily chemical, and that when it was gone, so was so much of the drive. I'm sharing that just to let you know that you are in that age bracket where there's hormones just rush through you like a river. To some extent, the things you feel are pretty typical and to be expected in your age bracket. The natural world has been outfitted to ensure the survival of each species. But I take your concern about moderation to heart because I do think that regarding your spiritual life, the sexual drive being too overpowering can impact it. And of course, it can lead to all sorts of destructive behavior. And as for the bisexuality, thanks for letting me know. But I think you're trying to find a place spiritually where you don't put as much focus on your sexual drive. As for your practice of letting your imagination run wild and flying solo, and I'm imagining that you're masturbating and enacting out a lot of fantasies in your mind, which concerns me just because of the impact on your marriage, possible impact on your marriage, if it's too frequent. If you're running wild with this too much, I worry that it could impact the intimacy with your wife because she'll never be able to live up to the fantasies in your head. And by going to all these places, you're perhaps distorting what a true, loving, intimate marital union can and should be. By doing this, you could be setting yourself up for problems over time when that intimacy erodes between you two. And then he goes on to share quite a bit about that, actually the intimacy between him and his wife is actually quite good. It's just not as often as he'd like. And so I went ahead and addressed his thoughts paragraph through paragraph. And I think I'll just go through that because that's simpler and goes through it easier. And so I said, I'll just address this paragraph to paragraph. I think the way you describe your sex drive is very common, and even more so for men than women. Men's sex drives are more powerful than women, although women also struggle with the very same drive. In the end, we forget that we are animals. We have natural drives given to us by our nature, and it ensures we procreate and propagate the species. It sounds like you have excellent things in place to avoid temptations, but I would also suggest that maybe you change some of this. Rather than looking at women as temptations, because he speaks so much about women as temptations, maybe start altering your view of their bodies in a more sexual way and try to begin by allowing yourself to identify the beauty that God has endowed in them. like you would the Grand Canyon or a forest or a river. You may feel like you already do this, but I'm suggesting you do this more, because by seeing the beauty of women as something completely forbidden, bad, wrong, horrible, I wonder if maybe this is the wrong approach overall. Not that avoidance of the occasion of sin is not a good plan. It is. However, I feel like what often really helps is when we come to an appreciation of beauty, yet a detachment from it. We can visually enjoy it, but not have an interior need to take it any further. Of course, this would not apply to pornography or to women who are inappropriately dressed. It's just an appreciation of beauty rather than viewing every woman as a potential sex object or partner. I do understand that it is possible you already do that, but just reiterating it, because as you get older here and move on into your 50s, your hormones will start changing. Your drive won't go down. Men are different from women, but you do have the opportunity to appreciate more and want less. As you get older, it's easier to realize how many young women could be your child, your daughter. You had your daughter later in life. I had my children starting at the age of 22. So I see almost everyone from the standpoint of mother, and this changes things. You have to look now at women from the standpoint of father and respond as father. There is great honor in this, right? It will help you alter your viewpoint from lust to beauty. I'm glad it's not pornography, and it's also normal for women to masturbate too, so no worries there. So he's referring to himself as heteroflexible. And I said, I think heteroflexible is a good word. It sounds like you appreciate beauty already, and you can appreciate beauty in the male form once in a while too. You just appreciate beauty and leave it there. It sounds like you and your wife have a great balance with your sex life, and that's really good as long as she feels the same. Some women like it when their partners initiate, but if your wife feels different, then do it the way that works for you too. I'm sure you've gone over and repented for past acts, and we have all done things we feel badly about in the past. So remember, Christ is our merciful and loving God who understands how he made us. I'm very happy you continue to be benefiting from the Desert Fathers, because they really are excellent for this type of alteration in your life. This will help you a great deal because they are the masters of it. And it is also important to remember that purification is a process. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It's a continual process. It ungrounds you. Yes, it ungrounds you. So don't be surprised that you feel ungrounded while you're going through it. But you came into this process to find your way to that place. And finding your way to it will be a journey. It's not going to happen in a way that's always comfortable or fast. Don't worry that you're not there, that you're not there yet. You're doing well working your way there. So just keep working your way there. Don't worry about your sense of sexuality. We all have it. And as my former priest, who was in his 80s at the time, used to say, we will be tempted until 20 minutes after our death. So I'm sure there's no way around it. We're made this way to be male and female. Don't feel badly because you're a man. God intended you to be a man. And I think it's really wonderful that it appears that you and your wife have very open conversations about things, and you've worked out things that apparently are very amenable to both partners. And that's really important in a marriage. So these two have really been open in their conversations and been very, they've really worked out a system that is working for both of them. And that's ideal. And I think that's really important. But what I'm trying to get across, so many people come to me and they feel such guilt about their sexual drives. And what needs to happen is more of an understanding that these are normal drives, they're animal drives, and part of the purification process. And the Desert Fathers are an excellent example to us of how this is done, is that we have to pacify them. You know, whether we're married, single, whatever, we have to pacify them. And part of the way that we do this is that we start looking at things differently. And we start seeing things through the eyes of beauty rather than through the eyes of lust. We see things differently. And so we see our vices and we come up with alternative means of viewing reality. that are godly and of a greater expansive way of seeing, that gives us more freedom to appreciate God's creation and alter these drives into something that is pure and satiated, and is then subdued, and in a place that is no longer reckless, no longer self-seeking and or harmful to others, harmful to ourselves, etc., things like that. And so that's really good. And I mentioned that not all couples can work out their sex lives openly and satisfactorily for both partners. So that's a job well done. As for theology of the body, Pope John Paul II was the originator of this theology, and its whole understanding is the sacramental nature of the union of man and woman in marriage and sexuality, and how our sexuality is not a dirty thing, but a beautiful gift from God. So that's something that anyone can take a look at and learn a great deal from. And that's where my computer went nuts again, so we'll just ignore that. And so where that must have printed over here. Okay, yeah, so there it is. So that's where we want to try to get him to not be ungrounded by the sexuality. And so it's overtaking him. It's too much. It's excessive. And hopefully this is helpful. I'm hoping I'm making enough sense on how we want to take the excessiveness of it and bring it into submission to something different, where he can now regard it in a different place. And by utilizing the Desert Fathers, a lot of people really make a lot of progress with this. Let me see. I think I've missed some thoughts here. Anna says, St. Francis comes to mind. Excellent point. St. Francis is an excellent example, and you can learn a lot from his writings as well, and the Franciscan writings. And, St. Clare also. Kyle, welcome. Kyle03, welcome. Ignoring it helps. And the less you do it, the less powerful it is, to where the desire can fade entirely. Excellent thoughts. Some form of spiritual practice that involves a bit of celibacy can help with discipline too. Thank you for those thoughts, Kyle. Appreciate them. Yes, because this is something that a lot of men especially, but I do hear from women as well, struggle with. And, it's interesting because they express a lot of the same things that I'll just go over here real quickly, which is that they view women through the eyes of lust. They view women in it. They don't see women through the eyes of beauty. And I think that's a big part of the distortion. It's always through this. And then what happens with that is then women become like this occasion of sin. They become something else. They become a temptation. And rather than seeing them, even in the Tibetan book of the Great Liberation, written by the first Dalai Lama, one of the practices that he taught was seeing all living beings as father, mother, sister, brother, wife. And it's really helpful, because what we do when we do this is it allows us to bring ourselves into this compassionate space of reflecting on how we would want others and how we would want to treat, but how we would want others to treat that person. If that person was my mother, if that person was my sister, if that person was my daughter. And this forces us into all these other perspectives of the filial responsibilities of society, that actually is going right along with what your thoughts are, Kyle, in some practice of celibacy, some practice of restraint, but then also taking it further and actually meditating and contemplating on these other relationships. It's really a powerful practice. Father, mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, spouse, wife, husband, beloved friend, looking at every living being in this way. And when we do this, it completely alters how we love other humans. And so yes, and so that was one thing, is that difficulty in seeing women or the opposite sex in a different way, viewing them in a larger way, viewing through beauty, but also feeling like not realizing that this is actually very normal. This is a normal part of being a man. It's also a normal part of being a woman. We have this natural attraction to the opposite sex, and whatever your sexuality is, you have a natural attraction. The spiritual aspect is that we want to mitigate the excesses in it that prevent us from being kind and loving and moderate beings and thoughtful beings, and also the things that prevent us from going forward in our own spiritual journey. Those are the kinds of things that come to mind when we want to look at how do we properly mitigate those sexual desires and bring them to a place that is healthier, but also not overly judge ourselves for the fact that they exist, because they exist for every single one of us. So this is totally normal. But let's begin by recognizing those few things and start there. And the Desert Fathers are a great place to start. I love adding St. Francis to that mix. And Kyle's suggestion obviously is excellent, of adding celibacy as part of the practice, or some celibacy as part of the practice. And these types of contemplations, definitely, the training the mind in the great way, which is the meditation on all humankind, being father, mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, spouse. And you can read that. There's a book. It's called Training the Mind in the Great Way, written by the first Dalai Lama, and it is excellent for that. And of course, the writings of the great Desert Fathers are in the book, series of books called the Philokalia, which is excellent, because every writing that you will read in there will subdue your mind just by the nature of reading it. So we have one more question, and I am going to read that now. So this one I am going to read from here. So this question: can I ask you a question about parenting? I love my youngest a lot. I love all my kids a lot. I find that I have to work harder to love them equally as they get older and behavior becomes difficult. Not that I love them any less, obviously. It's hard to be present in remembering to start with gentleness when their misbehavior becomes intentional beyond a certain age. Everyone's kids are different and such. I'm fully prepared to continue learning how to increase my love through feelings of occasional disdain during episodes versus staying sour. This person's children probably vary in age between about 5 or 6 and 2 and another on the way, and about 4 children in total here. And what I shared, and I did share, I was going to go in more detail on this live, was that all of that's normal. And learning to love our kids in their good and bad moments is a big part of the parenting journey. So don't feel bad that it is sometimes difficult, because that's totally normal. What I wanted to add to that would be that, what happens with our children is that when they're first born, we often see the innocent, very lovable side of them. And then as they start growing up and becoming older, first they go through what all children go through, which is all of the things that they have to learn um, as children in order to grow up into adulthood. And so it's all the things that all children do, which is, as parents, we know what all of those things are. So they're going to lie, they're going to violate boundaries, they're going to see what kinds of boundaries they can push. And these things are going to get more and more intense as they get older and go into their teenage years. And every kid will be different, because what happens is, as they grow, even so, their personalities will emerge. And with those personalities will come out the particular life stream that they're coming in with, and all the issues, the karmic issues from their past, and whatever it is that they're coming in to accomplish in this lifetime, and whatever things that they carry with them from the past. And so those things will be coming with them. And so don't be surprised if you will have personality clashes, even with your children when they're 6 years old or 8 years old, or especially as they become teenagers, it becomes more and more noticeable, because they are going to all be different personalities and different people. And then as they discover slowly, because it just starts emerging in them gradually, as they try to find their way to what it is they set out for themselves to do in this life, or to achieve or accomplish, or the people they're supposed to meet, they just start trying to then individuate from their parents. And sometimes there's huge clashes, and that's also normal, because they're trying to find their way to what it is they incarnated to accomplish and do. And so it's normal for us to have these feelings even as parents. And it's normal that when our kids do things that we are not happy with, that we're not happy about it. But our path as parents, ironically, is also a spiritual path. And that's what we don't want to lose along the way, which is that we are also being formed and molded as parents and as humans and as spiritual beings in the parenting journey, which is that we are learning patience and love and kindness, and we are learning to sacrifice and to give and to be something more ourselves. And that is such an important part of our task as parents. And we will go through these kinds of things with our children, because they will have things they don't like about our personalities. And there will be times where there will be things that we don't like about their personalities. And there will be times when we have to learn to understand, well, why do they feel this way? Or why are they like this? But these processes are all part of the spiritual journey that we wanted to take with them, even before we ourselves were born, when we thought, well, I'm going to take this journey with these souls, because I'm not only going to help them, but it's going to help me. Even the tough times will help me, and the tough times will help them. And we're going to go through it together as much as possible. And that's part of what being a parent is all about. And we have to always remember, as we're going through it, that this spiritual journey is as much for us as it is for them, because it is to form us into better, deeper, more loving, more patient, more kind, giving, sacrificial human beings. And that is why it's so difficult at times, So be prepared for it to be difficult. Be prepared for you to have times where it's difficult to love your children or not to be angry at them. And when you have those moments, don't feel bad about taking a step back and being like, well, I need to go in the other room for an hour so that I can just step back, and then you just take a moment to do whatever you need, or an hour, whatever it takes. And then you step away from it, do what you need to get into the right mindset. But remember that that's going to be a normal part of the journey, and it's going to be ongoing, because we are in the work of forming their souls, and they are in the work of forming ours. So hope that's helpful. And it looks like we have some comments here from Amanita Muscata. Also, they change as they grow. They absolutely do. They go through phases of being easier and harder. Absolutely. So true, Amanita. Mine are all in their 40s now. It turns, let's see, it turns on in the end. I'm not, there's something blocking that letter for me. I can't see it. It either turns on or off in the end. So yeah, mine are in their mid 20s to mid 30s. So I totally understand what you're saying, Amanita. It changes as they grow, and they're easier and harder times, and who knows where it ends up, because yes. So thank you for those thoughts too, Amanita. So those are our questions. We got through it. We got through quite a bit today. And so thank you all so much for joining me for today's live, and keep sending the questions. If you have any more questions before I sign off here, throw them up in the chat. We can handle them right now. But if not, we'll be signing off in a second here. Just a reminder, subscribe. Please like all my videos. Go back and like them all, and subscribe to the channel, because these are the things that get us up in the algorithms, and we really need more subscriptions. We really need that, and we need the likes on the videos, and that's what we need to get the search engine standing. That's how we get found when people search for stuff, and so that's so important. And the memberships are really helpful. So if you can be a member, that would be so helpful. We make everything free, and so anything that you can do, like being a member, is very helpful in keeping things free to anyone in the world. And we like to try to do that because we just want everyone in the world to be able to access what we have to offer. We want people to have access to spiritual truth. One of our goals is to reduce spiritual hunger worldwide. It was in response to what Mother Teresa had said, that she felt that the spiritual desolation and the poverty in the West was worse than the physical poverty. And so that was what kind of formulated our little goal, which was to reduce spiritual hunger worldwide. So if you can become a member, please do. It really helps us a great deal to just keep everything going. It's expensive to do the things we do, and I appreciate it so much. But even if you can't do that, please subscribe. Go back and like all our videos. Go watch them. Watch time on the videos is very helpful on all of that. All those algorithms, those are the things they look for. Watch time on the videos, likes on the videos, subscribing to the channel. So I ask you to please do all that. And Adriana says, thank you so much. It was wondering. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And Amanita Muscaria says, Marilynn, you could go on other podcasts. It's how I first found you. Well, I have a couple of podcasts coming up. This Monday, I'll be on The Last Frequency with Mike Vera, and that'll be on in the evening, different times, whether you're Eastern or Pacific, but you can check that out on The Last Frequency. And coming up on February 5th, I'll be doing Cosmic Tuesdays with Anthony Pica, I believe. And so we've got a couple of those coming up. So, and always make sure to check out all of the podcasts that we have done, because we have like well over 150, 200 on the website. And obviously they are also right here on the YouTube channel. So you can listen to all of the previous podcasts and radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM and Midnight in the Desert, and lots of big radio shows that we've done over the years. Joan Rivers, check them out, watch them, and lots of watch time, like them, all those things. So please do that, and please be there for the upcoming ones as well. And I appreciate it so much. Adriana says, wonderful. Oh, and Amanita says, you people are hungry for it. It was wonderful. Sorry, sometimes it gets changed typing. Yeah, the screen has changed since I was on here last. So yes, it is different. But so thank you everyone so much. It's been a wonderful time with you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much, John, for the super chat. So appreciate the super chats. Everyone's welcome to do them. You know, they really help us to get extra cash for the running of the foundation, which is so helpful and so appreciated. And so I hope to see you all next time. Please send me your questions by my email, Marilynn Hughes at outofbodytravel.org. And we'll keep holding on to them, and we'll do them in our next live stream. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time, guys.